gotta leave your money behind you. Raise your hand to...
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gimme Some Truth. Today we have a fun little podcast, we think. We think it's fun. I hope you think it's fun as well. But we have Stan Farmer in the room, and we have a special guest, Jonny Hoffner. And Johnny's a Madisonian, but we were inspired by his recent trip to Portugal with his family. And they were there. I can let Jonny talk about this, but with our client base, we have clients, of course, all over the world. We have a decent amount of clients in Portugal, particularly, whether they retired there or working there. But we thought it'd be fun to just chat about what the appeal of it is. Then you can talk about your experience there with the family and the kids and everything. And we're just going to somewhat wing it from that extent. And we're going to talk about Portugal. And Stan, of course, on the financial side is very well versed in this space. But that is the plan for today. So that said, Jonny, do you want to give us a quick intro as far as maybe who you are, what you do, the businesses, plural, that you own, etc.?
Sure. Well, thank you all for having me, Stan and Mitch. I hope to give you all some truth. My name is Jonny Hoffner.
So we asked, Jonny,
Yeah.
just some truth.
I'll do my best. But as Mitch said, grew up in Madison. My wife and I own a photography business called Antler. It's been in operation since 2008.
Mind if I interject already?
Please.
So some of the pictures you might see on our website are from Antler. So there you go.
That's right. Johnny's part of the family here.
Yep, that's right. I might be adopted, but I consider myself a part.
Yes.
So yeah, my wife and I own Antler, primarily focus on weddings, but we're kind of freelance, so whatever comes our way, including financial advisor headshots. And then in the last year or so, helped launch a golf brand called Good Lion Golf.
Now, can we see that in the video there? Is it? Okay. Excellent.
Yep. Shameless.
And
Good Lion Golf. Where did you come up with the name Good Lion Golf?
It's a nod to Aslan from Narnia.
Okay.
So it's all predicated on living in a way that is good, but not necessarily safe.
Okay.
Similarly, golfing in a way that's good, not necessarily safe, dressing the same way. So it's taking little slight soft barbs at golf culture and making it hopefully a bit more accessible to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I've got my own lion story, and it's about golf here in Wisconsin.
I like it.
That made me think, maybe it was related to that.
So what is the story?
Yeah, lion in Wisconsin?
First trip to Whistling Straits, which hopefully some of you listeners got to see the Ryder Cup last fall, where the U.S. absolutely shellackered the Europeans. I mean, just destroyed them, which was played in Whistling Straits. Not surprising, our USA golf coach, Steve Stricker, right, is a Madisonian as well.
Represent.
And
we're trying to get him on the team.
Naturally, I think Whistling Straits ranks as the third highest ranked public course. I don't know how you call it public, but one of the best golf courses in the nation, and one of the hardest golf courses I'll probably ever golf in my lifetime. And I remember, going out there with Clint and with our friend Will Click from here too, from one of our friends that works with First Trust, right, which is one of the management companies that we utilize for some of our investments, right? And the three of us are out there also with another financial advisor from Green Bay. So it's a Wisconsin affair. And Clint and I are sharing a caddy who looks a lot like Aaron Rodgers without a beard, like the clean Aaron Rodgers, the young Rodgers, right? And he's a bit of a smartass. He's been caddying there for 7 years, and I think it was the second hole of the course. And of course, I'm trying to just kill the ball, and naturally, what transpires when you're trying to kill the ball, make up for the last hole. I sliced it terribly up over a hill, and there's everything there is like hay. It's like really tall grass, but I knocked it up over these sand dunes, and there's even these plants that look more like cactus than like, plants that you would normally expect to see in Wisconsin. But anyway, caddy goes, "Oh, Stan, you're up in lion country." So I'm like, okay, so like I get it. It's kind of like grassy savanna, right? You might see, something like that in South Africa, Namibia, or Botswana. I can see why you call it lion country, but that wasn't why he called it lion country. I found out a little bit later when I got to go try to find my ball. I climbed the hill. I got over the dunes and up on the grass and realized there's only the grass is only like 10 feet wide, and then there's like a 20-foot drop off into a swamp, and I mean a swamp. And he goes, "Yeah, lion country. Because if you said you found your ball, you're lying."
Nice.
I like
nice.
that.
How clever.
I honestly, the whole time you're telling this story, I was still thinking the animal until the very end. But in any case,
But now let's talk more about Jonny and his Portuguese adventures.
yeah. So tell us, how did you even think about going to Portugal, and then furthermore, just bringing the whole family for we'll call it a month?
Sure. So yeah, we, as primarily wedding photographers, our winters are pretty slow. And prior to kids, and even when our kids were a bit younger, they're now 8 and 5, we tried to make a habit of leaving in the winter, because winter is great for a period of time, perhaps a couple days or a couple weeks, but then can drag on like the snowstorm today. So Portugal had been on the radar for a few reasons. One, it's arguably the best weather in Europe in the winter. It's, as silly as it sounds, it's very close. Like, it's the closest section of Europe to arrive to. And then I also have a little bit of an interest in being at the beginning or the end of a place. So like the fact that it's the edge of the old world was really appealing and interesting to me. So yeah, just from all those standpoints, it's affordable, safe, easily accessible for European trips. That was what put it toward the top of our list.
And have you been there before for a wedding photography or a wedding, to photograph by chance, or was?
Not to Portugal.
Okay.
We've done other European trips. When the kids were really young, we spent a month in Italy. So Michelle and I have gone for work for other purposes, but never to Portugal.
Okay. Italy, interesting as well too, which also probably a growing place for expats from what I know.
Well,
but we don't need to tangent too much.
No, I would say that like Portugal's success over the last 7 years has spurred by their tax programs, has led Italy to adopt a similar tax program, and Greece as well.
Interesting.
So, yeah. But they've got a lot of catching up to do because Portugal was always, and I'm sure when you went to the Algarve, you had to start thinking you were in the warmest part of the United Kingdom for a while, right? I mean, because it's so British, right?
100%.
So it's always been that attraction for retirees from Britain, right? But now it's the hottest spot for Americans to go retire in Europe, right? I mean, it's probably not as popular as Mexico in terms of the number of people who do it, but it's just really caught on, much like it did for the British, as a great, fantastic destination to go retire and to spend at least maybe the earlier parts of your retirement as a great launching pad to the rest of Europe.
You can see why it's attractive pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And
your taxi ride from that airport that's in need of replacing, which supposedly is happening, to your hotel might have cost more than it would cost to fly to Malta from Lisbon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did the kids think? I mean, what was some of the feedback that you got from Rocky and Dottie?
Yeah, they adored it. Traveling with kids is obviously a bit different than if it were just to be Michelle and me, but they took to soccer, or like our son Rocky, who's 5, he is all American football all the time, and all the kids at the parks
Awesome.
there, because we're spending a lot of time again with children, with like we're out and about at parks. And so they would play in the courtyards in the parks, and the goal would be under the bench. So they spent a lot of time making friends that way, even though there's a huge cultural and language barrier. One of the very funny parts was early on in one of their kind of pickup street games, there's a kid in a Brazilian soccer jersey, and he was actually flopping. Like he was pretending to have hurt his hamstring or his knee, and he'd writhe around on the ground. And this kid's probably 7.
I feel like I've seen
They
this
learned
on
this
TV
from an
before.
early age in Europe.
It was pretty funny. So
It's an
then
art form.
they'd like hop up and start laughing. And it took Rocky in particular by surprise every time he thought this kid was actually deeply hurt. And so he'd go check on him, and then the kid would pop up laughing. Yeah, the kid, and every morning we would, and I actually am not hyperbolizing here, we would have chocolate croissants and then fresh squeezed orange juice from the grocery store. Like there's an orange juice maker right when you walk in. And so they were pretty stoked on Portugal just from that alone. I don't think they would have needed to see much more than chocolate croissants and orange juice.
Exactly. So to one of your earlier comments about kind of, the beginning, the end, and the edge of something, right? The edge of the old world. And you did some golf while you were there as well. We obviously kicked this podcast off with golf, like we do many podcasts, probably, Stan. I don't know. Golf probably inserts its way into a decent amount.
The as you can see from outside right now, we just got dumped on for like the 3rd or 4th time since the beginning of February. I think with each snowstorm, there comes more of a desire to think about golf. So
exactly,
it's really hard to get golf off your brain on a day like today.
Exactly. And to that point, I'm guessing then that course was right on the edge. Am I correct in that?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Sure. So we were in northern Portugal in Porto, the oldest wine region in the world, birthplace of port wine. And I was looking for a course that was links style. I'm partial to links style golf, and there's a course along the water, so it kind of married coastal links. Seemed like the perfect fit, and it was decently close to where we were staying. So all of us, 4 of us, piled into the car, drove to the course. I'm wearing a Good Lion golf sweatsuit. This was kind of the only hiccup of the golf moment. But I was wearing an olive green sweatsuit and a beanie because I didn't pack golf clothes, and I don't traditionally wear golf clothing even when I am golfing. So at the course, there's, again, a huge language barrier. I could not really, we were missing each other during our exchanges in the clubhouse. And so as I'm leaving, 2 women actually block the exit, and they start finger wagging, like matumboing me. And I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was like maybe my hoodie, maybe it was a beanie, and they point to my pants. And it's the fact that I was wearing joggers. And they're
only the pants.
Only the pants. The pants are the problem. Not been a common thread in my life. The pants are the problem. So they point to my pants, which are fitted, nice joggers, if I may say so myself. And one of the ladies departs, comes out of the bag room a couple minutes later with these double XL wind pants, hammer pants, moon pants.
And you don't look like a double XL kind of guy.
I'm a strong medium. And so Dottie and Rocky, my son and daughter, and then my wife Michelle, are watching this whole thing unfold, and they're kind of half laughing, half aghast at all of it. So these women stand there until I put on these pants over top of my joggers, and I had to like penguin waddle out of the clubhouse, and I wore them off the first tee and then quickly took them off.
Did they supply a belt?
No belt.
And you probably didn't have them if you had joggers on, right?
Correct. So yeah, there's like that kind of funny, like golf culture knows no boundaries. It like can be a bit backwards in the States. It can be a bit backwards in Europe. That being said, the course itself was gorgeous. Loved playing. We had all 4 of us in the golf cart. We had a bag of popcorn and Harry Potter for the kids, so they were pretty well set. And Michelle is a champ. keeping them somewhat under wraps. But they were running around the sand dunes, playing on the hills, like the kind of rumpled fairways. And there were a couple moments where they were both tumbling down the tee box basically as I'm trying to swing, which again, is good practice in a pressure-filled moment.
How difficult is it to get on this golf course?
It's still off season for them, so I was able to get on relatively easily.
Yeah.
It was full. I played through a lot of people because I was trying to play relatively quick.
And it was just you playing, right? Like
just me.
So Michelle didn't have her clubs or anything?
No,
Does she have clubs?
She does have clubs here. She's a sneaky good golfer. But I had nothing. I didn't have a glove. I bought a few of those like balls that they find basically in the ocean. I was very ill-equipped and ill-prepared, which I think actually made it very fun because you're not as concerned about your performance, which I think is a bit of a fool's errand for anybody who's not a pro. The focus was to enjoy the beauty, have time together, and then sneak in around.
Was there a golf course that this reminded you of?
Sand Valley. Sand Valley was
Really?
the goal. I haven't gotten to play the Straits course. I've played the Irish course in Kohler.
No, but I mean, is the golf course in Porto is there one here that you've golfed that the Portuguese course mirrored?
Yeah, I think it would be closest to a place like Sand Valley as far as just like it has the openness, the link style, sand, and obviously the beach is blowing across the fairway. So there are certain fairways where you're leaving.
Now a picture's developing in my mind. I'm like, Sand Valley, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would give Sand Valley the nod over Estella Golf Club. No disrespect to Estella Golf Club, but Sand Valley in my mind is hard to beat.
The one thing I found kind of interesting, you mentioned right with the story of the pants.
Yeah.
The slight language barrier. So I'm kind of curious, when you were traveling around Portugal and even just like a typical day, how was that? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but is English your only language?
Yeah, I speak. Okay. I can converse with maybe like a third grader in Spanish.
Okay. So yeah, I guess could you speak a little bit to being an American there, just primarily knowing English?
Yeah. So it's one of those humbling moments where you realize Americans really aren't well versed in other languages or cultures, and much of the rest of the world is or has to be. And so, yeah, a lot of the people that we met, at least like some of the younger crowd, there's, as was discussed earlier, there's a lot of Americans in Portugal. A number of people said it feels like California in the 60s. And it's specifically a lot of Californians that seem to be moving there.
Wow, we're gonna that's the best endorsement for Portugal. Like, you know, they should be running commercials.
Ad campaign
like California in the 60s.
Yep.
We're gonna have a good old time, you know. I mean, especially because now the people who, you know, enjoyed California in the 60s are the kind of people who are retiring, right? So
right. So yeah, there was a language barrier for sure, but through some like gesturing and, you know, you can generally get your point across.
I mean, the Matumbo, right? That's universal.
100%.
Yeah, that's universal. So Stan, because when you came back in 2011, is that right?
Yeah.
So when you were there, like you said, it was different, right? A lot of this explosive growth was the last decade, but
completely.
You do know Portuguese, correct?
Yes, a pouco falar, but you couldn't find. I speak Portuguese like I could follow along and people will understand what I'm saying, but you know, my wife would critique my Portuguese, you know, at you know, a 5th grade level or something like that, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
And writing Portuguese is very difficult, but reading Portuguese not so hard.
Interesting.
I'm not sure if I'm right about this. You can correct me, Stan, on it, but it seems to be a bit of a marriage of Spanish and French. Like there's a bit more of a French sound to it than I was expecting.
I mean, so it is in terms of reading, it's very Spanish, right? I mean, there's so many of the words are virtually identical. It's mostly the pronunciation that differs, right? So there's just a certain way that Portuguese is spoken that is like it. I don't know how to say it. It's a stronger pronunciation.
Yeah.
So Spanish people, like I've often said this, and it's very true. And Portuguese people will agree, and I think most Spanish people will agree. You put a Portuguese person with a Spanish person that don't know each other's languages at all.
Yeah.
The Portuguese person will understand everything the Spanish person is saying, right? The Spanish person will understand very little of what the Portuguese person is saying.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
interesting.
harder than Spanish in that sense, if you will, right? There's just the way that certain words are pronounced so completely different, right? Brazilian Portuguese, I will also add, is kind of you think of Brazil as the only Portuguese speaking country surrounded by Spanish speaking countries. It's almost Spanished down Portuguese in a sense, and they intentionally use verb tenses that are easier, right? So there's like 7 verb tenses for every verb, but like you say, if you use the what is it, the to, the I am going to, it's like if you speak in this way and you just use the standard verb phrase for the ser, to be, right? It's just easier. It's just easier, to speak, to figure it out, and therefore to follow. But anyway, we digress. But,
yeah.
But
Shell and I spent a little bit of time in Brazil like 10 years ago, and we were able to get by a bit easier language-wise.
Now you were in Lisbon and Porto, and you spent some time in the Algarve, and you also were where else?
Those 3 places primarily, and then for the very last week of the trip, we went to Paris.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So did you find that that English was more understood in one area more than the others?
Not in particular.
Okay,
No.
I mean, because those are kind of the 3 big areas where Americans have, located in force, I would say, right? You've got your retirees kind of going to the Algarve more often, right? And you got younger people, sometimes retirees, of course, too, but like, you've got your digital nomads that are probably more likely to hang in Porto or Lisbon, right? Want the more urban environment. But of course, you've got retirees that like to live in cities, you know what I mean? And
Right.
And that's really, I mean, when we think about it, Lisbon's not that much larger than Madison, to put it all in perspective, right? We think about a country that's got less people than Wisconsin, and the capital city, which has, about the size of Madison, and it's but it's like, it's a worldly country. It's a worldly city.
Well, it's ancient. It's incredible. I think the age and antiquity to all of it is stunning. The place that we stayed in, Porto, was 400 years old.
Yeah.
And
another city that's, I mean, it's not particularly huge, right? And then you start thinking about immigration policy, to try to attract, outside wealth. It's only natural to worry a little bit that, like, foreign migration to this country could, like, really impact the culture of those countries in a negative way, like, or almost displace the population, so to speak.
We did
which has
hear
been
that
a growing
concern.
Yeah. So I mean, they've taken. You mentioned before we started the podcast that you understood that, like, it was one of the easier places to get a visa for an American, and that's true. But I would note that like the trend has been there's always ways, like if you have citizenship in another EU country, like getting the visa is very easy. But like there were these the golden visa programs for kind of like people who are willing to put real money into getting their visa. Those have been curtailed quite a bit. They've said, you know what, those involve an investment amount, and you can make the investment through like Portuguese funds, like real estate pooled funds, or you can buy a home, right? And they've curtailed the ability to get a golden visa based on real estate investment direct real estate investment, buying a property in Lisbon, and I'm not sure if they've closed Porto yet, but Cascais.
So this is a pretty recent,
like the richest, like call it the burb of the coastal suburb of Lisbon, almost, right?
I heard it called the Hamptons of Lisbon.
It is, I mean, it is like you don't have to make a day of it driving there, but I mean, I guess sort of, right?
Yeah.
But they've had to pull back some because we've had such an effect on their real estate market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we did. A couple of our Airbnb hosts spoke to some of the glories and hardships of that.
Yeah.
That with it comes, it is increasingly global in many ways, which is beautiful. And then some of the cultural impacts you can view positive, as far as there's some new restaurants, there's a new influence and influx of creativity and design, but then it also is raising costs of a number of things, which obviously can make it more difficult as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, in a way, it's gentrification, right? But I mean, I think that most of the people that I've talked to in Portugal tend to think that it's net positive.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I just love it to death because obviously it's great for business, but like I always wanted to have clients in Portugal after I left, naturally, right? But like there were none to be found, and I always wanted to make friends with other Americans in Lisbon. Well, the only one that I knew were the ones that I was already working with, right? In Angola, right? I mean, I happen to work with an American colleague who is married to an Angolan, much like myself, and they went and lived in Lisbon, and then we ended up opening an office for the firm in Lisbon. But I mean, you could find Americans. I remember watching the 2010 World Cup in a bar in downtown Lisbon, in a sports bar, and no Americans, right? No Americans watching the game, and I remember we ended up losing the match to Ghana. And it was a glorious match, but we ended up losing in the end, and the entire crowd in the place, the Portuguese don't like, the last thing the Portuguese want is they've never held the cup, despite that they're such a great soccer nation, right? And their colony, Brazil, obviously is the greatest soccer nation, but the idea of America advancing further than Portugal in a World Cup is just not popular. And we had beaten Portugal with the great Luis Figo. I think right in the prior World Cup, the 2006 World Cup.
Yeah.
And but when Ghana scored a winning goal at the end, and I got up and we left, right, it was really close to the end. But then when Ira and I got up to leave, they all just roared, was my unfriendly story about Portugal.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So don't go there because
not enough
you
to
think
push
that,
people
like,
away. Probably.
don't go live in Portugal if you think they're going to support your men's national team. But that's part of the fun. That is part of the fun of international competition anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
And as we're kind of wrapping up here, we're getting close to our time. Jonny, I'd be curious, outside of some of the memorable things that you've already told us about your trip, but
Sure.
Are there any other lasting memories that you'll be chatting with Michelle for years to come and your kids for years to come, or just someone that says, hey, tell us about your time in Portugal?
And is
memories?
this something that you'll repeat in the future? And is Portugal a place that you would consider retiring,
Oh my gosh.
someday?
If we can ever retire, 100%.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly desirable, lovely place, from the people to the culture to the environment. I'm totally smitten with Portugal. And there's many times when we've traveled, I don't have a strong desire to return. And with Portugal, even 3 weeks was a great amount of time, but it easily could have been 3 months and we wouldn't have seen enough just in that.
And I'm going to make a prediction that the next time you go to Portugal and golf with cuffed sweatpants, that they won't even say anything anymore.
Well,
because that's
they'll say golf pants.
That's the trend anyway.
Yeah,
right.
True.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I just got my first 2 pairs of kind of like a blend of golf trouser and sweatpant, right, with cuffed pants.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then you'll be ready to roll.
That's right. Yeah, but I think it still is relatively recent. We just got back a few weeks ago, so it's interesting to see what kind of memories are resurfacing. And it was really the last day in Portugal. There are a couple, one snafu and then one really beautiful moment. Our main snafu is we got the timing wrong on our Airbnb checkout. So we were in Sagres, which is the absolute end of the old world. It's where a number of the explorers set out for the unknown. And there's a fort there from I believe the 14th century. You can fact check that. But it's on the cliff side, overhanging the Atlantic, people fishing on the edge of the world, and then there's people surfing right beside it. So this is pretty amazing environment. And we actually, when we went to lunch, we didn't have an international phone plan, so we'd only get service when we could connect to Wi-Fi. So at lunch, we're with our kids. We're having a lovely day, last day in Portugal, thinking like we have one more night in our place in Lagos in the Algarve and fly to Paris the next day. Michelle's phone is blowing up with all these messages from our British host, and she's saying, like, it appears as though you're maybe a bit confused on your checkout time. Like, I notice all of your stuff is still here. So we had to quick hightail it back 45 minutes, rush pack up all of our stuff, which after 3 weeks of traveling with 2 kids, it's amazing the mess you can make and the spread that you have of just towels and laundry and groceries and all of it. So we drive back, dump all of it out onto the street, basically, carry it all to our rental car, and we're all sweaty and a bit down and just tired. And then we're like, you know what, we need to go redeem this. Let's go back to Sagres and like watch the sunset. So we got to, as hallmarky or hokey as it sounds, that last night there, you see the edge of the old world watching the sunset into nothing. And that was really powerful and beautiful. And there's people surfing, people on the cliffside watching all of it unfold. So that was a memory that I'll hold dear. Obviously, the time with family it's impossible to be any more grateful for that, to have those experiences and the little ways in which each of them from a young standpoint, 5 and 8, realize that there's so many more ways to live, so many more ways to do things. Just having that hopefully broaden their perspective and horizon a bit, whether they realize it now or when they're older, who knows. But yeah, I couldn't be a bigger fan of Portugal. I absolutely adored it and would love to go back.
That's amazing. Well, we appreciate you coming into the office to record this beautiful podcast, and with that, we can sunset this episode of
I like it.
Give Me Some Truth. And again, thanks, Jonny of Paper Antler and Good Line Golf.
Thanks, Jonny.
Thank you, Mitch.
Until
Thank you,
next
Stan.
time, boas viagens.
Obrigado.
Wachner Condon Financial Advisors is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Registration with the SEC does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The opinions expressed by the participants of this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Wachner Condon Financial Advisors. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. Thanks for listening, and for further information, please visit WachnerCondon.com.